Well, Senator John McCain is about to go in front of a Jewish lobbying group and hit hard.
Join me in welcoming the presumptive Republican nominee for president, Senator John McCain.
Well, it's very significant that Senator McCain, the presumptive presidential candidate for the Republicans, should be the star opening speaker at the National Conference of the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, known as AIPAC. But there is also a larger regional and global context, which was spelled out in an article published last Friday by Joschka Fischer, who was the German foreign minister at the time of the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Fischer says that unless Iran agrees immediately to all the conditions that are being made of it on the nuclear fuel enrichment issue, it faces the possibility of an imminent military attack from Israel. Fischer then goes on to say that the attack is imminent because Israel can be sure of its window of opportunity only while Bush is still in office. McCain's own remarks need to be read in this context, and no wonder, after some opening remarks, he turns to the issue of Iran by saying, foremost in all our minds is the threat from the regime in Tehran. McCain then proceeds with cavalier disregard for facts.
Tehran's continued pursuit of nuclear weapons poses an unacceptable risk, a danger we cannot allow. Its flouting of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty would render that agreement obsolete and could induce Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and others to join a nuclear arms race.
This charge of continued pursuit of nuclear weapons disregards the latest national strategy estimate of the United States itself, which categorically says that Iran has not pursued any kind of nuclear weapon program since at least 2003. McCain alone claims that Iran is violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The IAEA, on the other hand, acknowledges that Iran is acting strictly within the rights it has under the treaty and calls upon Iran to provisionally suspend its enrichment program voluntarily, simply as a confidence-building measure. This distortion of fact sounds a lot like the kind of spurious charges that were made against Iraq in a run-up to that invasion. McCain then goes on to castigate Obama, not to speak of Carter, Brzezinski, and others, for suggesting that the US should perhaps talk to Iran.
We hear talk of a meeting with the Iranian leadership offered up as if it were some sudden inspiration, a bold new idea that somehow nobody has ever thought of before. Such a spectacle would harm Iranian moderates in distance as the radicals and hardliners strengthen their position and suddenly acquire the appearance of respectability.
This is very strange. The impasse between Israel and Egypt was broken when President Sadat made a bold visit to Israel and directly addressed the Knesset, the same Sadat who had initiated the war of 1973. Impasse between China and the US was broken when Nixon and Kissinger showed up in Beijing. McCain's idea that official talks between leaders of the US and Iran would be a spectacle that would bestow sudden appearance of respectability on Irani leaders is simply fantastic. The whole world, heads of states in India, Russia, China, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all the Gulf countries, even the president and prime minister of the occupation regime in Baghdad, speak to Irani leaders all the time. The real crux of McCain's speech is that he proposes that the US pursue an immediate policy of extreme sanctions against Iran. Sanctions quite comparable to the ones that Iraq faced for a decade before the 2003 invasion. And it should do so, McCain says, through the Security Council if the Security Council is willing, and without the Security Council, simply in concert with its European allies if it needs to. In short, according to McCain, with respect to Iran, as for Bush, with respect to Iraq, the US really does not require the Security Council and should just go ahead with a coalition of the willing with whoever wants to cooperate with US unilateralism.